Hello there and welcome. In this video we are going to see how you can use the different ways to pass arguments to your context roots. So I have the recargs project initialized, and inside the settings I have bootstrapped the requesting apps project config, and inside the URLs, what is this? We need the include. This is not needed. Where did it come from? Yeah, this should be fine. So I have bootstrapped the requesting apps. So here what I have to do is to create a new file called urls.py, and we also have the views. So inside the urls.py, what I would like to do is to create my URL pattern, and basically I don't need the include, but what I need is the following. So let's call this arg based, and I would like to use from the views, or rather from dot import views, and let's call this views arg based, and we have to go to the views arg based and return from Django dot http import http response. So basically what we say that we return the http response of the simple request without arguments. Alright, now we need the request here as well. And if everything goes well, we should be able to use the run server. Requesting.apps does not contain project config. Requesting. No, this is the problem. So requesting config. Great. So now included doesn't appear to have any patterns. Name arg based. It is probably caused by circular imports. So we have the URL patterns, arg based, and here we have, the URLs. Alright. So basically this is the correct error message, and we did not define any kind of context root. But if I visit this site, you will see that this is a simple request without arguments. Now, if we want, we can provide arguments specifying different types. So for example, I would like to have an integer, which is an ID, and I would like to have the string, which is a name, and with args, and this is going to be called arg based with args and with args. Alright, and inside the views we would like to define this function. We have the request, and we have the ID and the name that we want to process. And if we want, we can return the HTTP response and say that the ID is ID and the name is name. Alright, if we save it and go back to our web interface, we have to use the following URL. This one, and we specify the ID of 10 and the name of Daniel. And as you can see, the ID is 10 and the name is Daniel. The other way is basically what's called query strings. So let's create a new context root and let's call this views.qs and the name is going to be QS. And inside this QS, what we can do is the following. Go back to the views and say that this is the QS function. We have the request, and technically what we would like to do is to print the request.get and return the HTTP response. And basically this is the query string based. Now if everything works well, perhaps I forgot a comma. So here, no, I did not forget a comma. Or did I? Yes, I did. So if I go back and open the default web page, you can see that this is a query string based. If I am to specify a query string, I can do it like this. So Danny and ID is equal to 10. And that way we should be able to see inside our query dict the keys and the values. So for example, we could go back and say that we want to see in the response the request dot get, and let's reload it. Let's go again, and not found. So let's see the keys. So this is an F string that should work. And as you can see, we have the keys. And if we go with the items, we should see the tuple. So, but we don't seem to have the query dict, I mean this information. So what we can do is to inspect it. So if I go back to my web page, reload it, and go back to the console, you can see that these are basically the functions that we have the option to use. So how do we get further than this? What we can do is to say that the name is equal request get name, and the default value will be NA or simply none, and the ID is going to be request.get ID with none. And I say that if the name and the ID is present, then I would like to return this response, and otherwise I would like to return that this is a query string based, no name or name and ID. And here I can swap out basically this one. All right. So if everything goes well, you can see that we have the ID and the name. And if I don't specify anything, there is no name and ID. So this is another way that you can use to pass arguments to your requests. But what you have to know is the way how you can access them. So this is the query string version, and the other one is basically the argument version. And technically that was it. This is all I wanted to show you in this video. See you in the next one.